that I launched recently with the team. It's called hunyuan.life, and this is like a marketplace where you could find courses that I recorded myself over the years. And also it's a place for anybody else who wants to join as an instructor and post their courses there. And it's very interesting concept if you want to visit it. But the reason that I'm mentioning it is because, since some time, at least couple of years, I'm not teaching live anymore. I used to teach for many, many years, and I have hundreds of hours of recorded classes. But when Sarah from Global Branches approached me, and I know her very long time, she actually helped me translate in a seminar that Hunyuan seminar that I gave in Sao Paulo in Brazil some years back. And when she said, "Hey, do you want to teach live again?" It kind of brought me back to life after all these years of teaching. And I said, "Yeah, sounds like a great idea to teach a live course again." So again, even though on my platform you can find many of my recorded courses, but here in Global Branches, that is actually the only place that I will teach in the near future a live course, which has its advantages, of course. So I want to start introducing this issue of Hunyuan. What is it about? And so I'm bringing the core understanding of what Hunyuan is, and this is one simple circle that you see here. So I want to step back for a moment and share with you some of my thoughts. When you talk about medicine, any kind of medicine, it doesn't matter modern medicine, Chinese medicine, Indian medicine, whatever it may be, there is an idea. There is an idea behind the medicine that then gives birth for the medicine to develop, even if it's very, very sophisticated. There is an initial idea what it is. Now, this idea, the more you progress, the more you investigate, may change too. So, for example, let's say modern medicine. You could say that modern medicine has like a very materialistic view of the body. You look at the body, there's organs, there's skins, there's things like that. But as modern medicine develops and technology develops, and you go into deeper and deeper details into the cells and genomes and all kind of things, even though you started with a very materialistic view, the medicine then start to change into something else because it becomes very highly sophisticated. You know what I mean? And so I think similar it is also with Chinese medicine. Like when I started Chinese medicine, it had very beautiful ideas to it, like yin and yang and the five elements and the connectedness of us to nature, and all this are absolutely true. But I'm just thinking, the more I was investigating and pondering into it, under the surface there was like a deeper and deeper content for me. And deeper here doesn't always mean complicated. Deeper means that it has a lot of virtue to it. So deeper, it's not necessarily it has a lot of details and it's very confusing, but rather it has very deep meaning. And this issue of the circle that you can see here. So whereas when you look at a person, at a living person, you can say, look, there is clearly a dialectic, a duality that a person lives. When they live through. So they go to sleep, they wake up, they go to sleep, they wake up. There's night, there's day, there's summer, there's winter, there's hot, there's cold. So when you look at it, there's clearly a duality, right? So this is like our starting point. At least when I started learning Chinese medicine, there was an access point that it was very easy for me to understand, like, oh yeah, there's hot and there's cold. There's night and day. I'm sleeping, I'm awake. Okay, it makes sense. There's a duality. There's two forces interacting. That kind of a thought. And again, this comes out from very ancient history. It's not a new idea, but throughout history of Chinese medicine, you have this dualism idea. But there were, and as you can realize, over thousands of years and millions of people, obviously there's more than one opinion, right? There are different people thinking different things, different theories. If it's meridian theories, five elements theories, yin and yang theory, and many different things in between. But there were those, that looked at the life of a human being as something that is more continuous. In other words, if you look at the surface of it, a person lives and then a person dies. So there are two states. You're either alive or you're dead. But actually, when people think that, it's what we see with the eye. You see with the eye that a person is alive, then a person dies, or a person is asleep, then a person is awake, right? You see it. If you ponder deeper and deeper, you realize actually that there is a continuum. There is something that continues. And again, this we can think about it and ponder it in many different ways over many years. But the principle is very simple. It's different than just what we see. We see it's like either night or day, hot or cold, live or dead. But actually, when you see that a person dies, let's just use that example. When you see that a person dies, actually the body stops being animated. Like the body doesn't have life force anymore, right? Look, the body is dead. But that's not necessarily describe the situation of what happened to the life within. And again, this is a big, big topic. I'm just introducing it here a little bit in the course that we're having. After that, every topic that I'm just introducing today, we have a whole class to discuss. Today, again, I apologize, it's just an introduction webinar, so I'm introducing different ideas that in the course to come, we'll explore all of them in detail. Right now, I'm just introducing this issue of life. The life, what is the life, is different than the body. The life is what animates the body. So in the first look, we start to think, or we may believe that the body animated, that's life. So when the body stops moving, life died. Like there's no life, it vanished, disappeared, or whatever. But if you study more and you look into ancient models of thinking, if it's in Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, in ancient China, this issue of life is a continuum. It's something that is borrowed into our body. And when the body dies, it doesn't mean that life dies, it continues. And that's why this is where this image of a circle comes to play to describe this. And this image of a circle in ancient Chinese philosophy, it's called the Tai Chi principle. Just like the martial art Tai Chi, but it's actually an ancient principle that shows that there's a continuous force in nature that our lives are part of. Now, when the life goes into the body and the body is animated, like the body becomes alive, this life is very precious, is part of the body. When the purpose finished and the body doesn't move anymore, the body dies, that life did not vanish into nothingness and it's meaningless, but rather that purpose continues, that connection continues. And this is what this continuum talks about. And I'm introducing it today just that you realize that in Hunyuan medicine, this is the underlying idea for the medicine. Remember, like I just explained before, there's an idea that the entire medicine sits on. This is this idea that our life, of course, not only is it precious, but it's continuous. It's always there. And then what I did, the way I developed medicine from there is to understand what's wrong when the life is not continuous anymore. What's wrong? Like, how do you diagnose when something is wrong there? How do you restore it to work again the way it should work, right? So now we're talking about this. We're not talking anymore about what I learned originally in Chinese medicine, like how to balance yin and yang, for example. So if it's hot, cool it off. If it's cold, heat it up. It's not that model anymore, right? We're talking about something that at least I believe and my experience shows, first, that it's superior, second, that it's highly effective, and third, that it has real, true virtue. In other words, it actually has a real meaning when you address it this way. So this is the idea behind Hunyuan medicine, that life is continuous. It's a circle principle. But now, from just one big philosophy, we're going into more details. So the first step of medicine is to start to investigate or create a theory from understanding the philosophy, like what's going on, like what is life, what does the life in the body do, that kind of thing. Just from grasping it as an abstract, this is what we did up to this point. I just described an abstract. What's a life like? It's a continuous action. We need to start to develop a theory that then we are able to test, we are able to prove if it's working or not working, and base our medicine on. And the theory means it's a working paradigm, right? So with an abstract concept, you cannot really do much. It's good for philosophy in the university, but now if you're talking about medicine and helping people, which is, you know, part of our purpose is to help people come to the world and help people, you have to have a working theory that then you need to test, see if it's working, not working. If it's not working, you have to fix it. If it is working, you need to improve it still. This is the theory. So what I'm looking for, and this is this image that you can see here, is from an abstract circle. That means there's a continuous movement. How do I then fit in this entire situation that I see in front of my eyes? So I see a person sleeping, waking up, sleeping, waking up. I see that there's hot weather, cold weather. There's summer, there's winter. Right? This is what we started at the beginning, right? I see these things, but I understand that there's something bigger. But how do I merge them? This is the beginning of the process, like how to start to realize what the body is doing. So when I'm thinking about the principle behind the body, this cyclical action, I realize that when a person is alive, he has the life in the body has what we call repetitive actions. Repetitive actions means actions that repeats themselves over and over and over. That's where that's where the circle actually has a more specific meaning. You can see in a circle that it repeats itself over and over again, and you can see in the circle there could be many different things, but you can see clearly that there's two sides to the circle, one that goes up and the other side that goes down. In our language, we would call it a part of the action that goes out to the superficial side of us and a part of the action that goes inward to the inside of us. So even though we're talking about a circle, now try to imagine I'm talking about a human being. And a human being is not a circle, right? You look at me, there's head, there's body, shoulders, everything, right? So, and then you start thinking about what kind of repetitive actions happen in the body. And you see that you put food into the body, you digest it, then you go to the bathroom, you drink water, it goes into the body, metabolized, and then it goes out of the body. You can see that many of the repetitive, if not all of them, the repetitive actions that we have in the body, the cyclical actions, are not circles on the outside of the body, but rather the circle here, the repetitiveness here is that it goes into the body and then it goes out of the body in different ways. But even though it goes in different ways, it repeats itself. So for example, you drink water, it goes to the stomach, you metabolize it again through the kidneys, go to the urine, and you urinate it, right? So the water does not come back out of the mouth, it comes out somewhere else, but it keeps on happening again and again and again. That's why it's a circle. Not that it comes back to the same physical spot, but rather it repeats itself over and over again. But you can see that here a circle means not from the left to the head or something like that outside of the body, but rather it goes into the body and it comes out of the body. It goes inside to the body and outside of the body. This is the circle that we're talking about physically when you apply to the body, and I'll talk about it in a minute more when we get to acupuncture. So when you look at the circle, there is an action, two actions that complete the circle. One of them we call separation, and this is the left side of the circle. In Portuguese, it says separação, I guess. So that's the left side of the circle. And on the right side of the circle, we have what we call a unification action. Separation action basically means that the activity or the energy or the action comes from the center of the body to the surface outside of the body to nature, right? It's that direction from my core, from my center, that goes all the way out to nature in many different ways. Doesn't matter if I sweat, if I urinate, if I defecate, if I just walk and reach out to something, right? These are all separation activities. And then the other part of the activities that we have are unification kind of activities, which means everything from around me, from nature, start moving towards my center. Either I inhale it, I drink it, the sunlight comes into my body, whatever is into me. This is called a unification direction. And again, the specifics in the course to come, we will talk more and more about it. So there could be many different things, but the principle is always the same. Whatever different activities I have in the body, they are either departing the center towards the exterior or they coming from the exterior towards my center. The reason that we have a body, a physical body, and this relates a little bit to my talk about fertility, so I'm jumping ahead, but just giving you the conclusion, the reason that we have a physical body is because in order to sustain life, remember this continuum I talked about at the beginning, there's a continuum. But in order to sustain the continuum in the physical world, not in heaven, not in wherever we go after we die, but in here, in this world, in order to sustain this continuum, I need to have a constant physical relationship with nature around me. Like I need to be merged with it. Merged with it means that I need to have a machine that is able to physically reach to nature and take nature and bring it into my body in different ways. If it's air with oxygen, if it's water, if it's food with energy, vitamins, whatever it is. I need to have a physical machine that will be able to physically reach out to things and bring them into my body. This is in a nutshell why my life needs a physical body. Otherwise, the life that comes to me in this continuum in this world will stop, goes right back to heaven if I don't have a body that functions. So the first job of medicine, for me at least, in Hunyuan medicine, is to start to investigate this phenomena of the physical body. What's going on with the separation? What's going on with the unification? When it does not go right, when it's not working the way it should, why, first of all, how does it look? How do I know that it doesn't work? Right? That we're talking about the diagnosis. How do I diagnose this? And more so, like, why would it happen? Why would this problem happen? And of course, the more I ponder into this, the more answers I have that I can resolve the problems. But this is the first job in medicine. In Hunyuan medicine, we call it number two. I just give different numbers to different things, but we call it number two. Number two, just to emphasize, in a minute I'll explain it, but it has a secondary significance. In other words, to have a very healthy body is very important, but actually it's not the most important. So there's more important things than that we'll talk about next. But this is number two. My number two is the physical body unification and separation activity, knowing what's going wrong, why it's going wrong. And then, of course, we get to the treatment. I'll talk about it also in a bit, what to do about it with external therapy, internal therapy, and other things, right? So what to do about it to restore that harmony. So the first thing for us to analyze and to learn about is the physical body and its cyclical action. But now, we realize in Hunyuan medicine that there is another thing going on here that I didn't really hear much about in other places. But actually, we kind of figured out. When I say we, I mean myself, figured out that there's another thing going on. Because the physical body has a unification, separation action with all the many different things that we do, like we eat, digestion. All this is part of the unification activity. My muscles, my bones, my tendons, how I walk from here to there, it's all part of the separation activity, right? But when I look at younger people and I look at our aging process and I compare a young person to an old person, it's very easy to realize that a young person and an old person have somewhat similar bodies. They do the same unification separation activity, but it's not the same. It's not the same because there is something else. There is another part to the story, and we call this the unification ability. Like there's an ability, and this is that circle in the bottom that says number one in it. It's a whole other story talking about when the continuum, that thing comes into a physical vessel and it wants to be here in this world. Not only do we need a physical body, a machine to connect me to nature, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, right? Doing these circles again and again and again. But it appears that the meaning of being here in this world is that it progresses forward and it perishes. This is part of the story of a life coming into the body and hanging around here for 100 years, 120 years. That's part of the story. And so for me, it was like a challenge to start thinking about that topic as well. Why do we age? Why can't we just keep on eating apples and bananas and chicken and just day and night, like let's say yin and yang, just keep the yin and yang going on and on and on and be immortal, never die. Right, so there's a whole topic here that I call, simply put here, the unification ability, the ability of this life in this body to unify with nature. So remember how I just mentioned before, I have a body that needs to reach out to nature, to harvest some apples, put them in the body, digestion, right? We have that physical action of going to nature, bringing nature in. But the real reason that we do that is not because we just need to eat apples. It's like we want to harvest energy, we want to harvest life from it, from nature, bring it into the body, convert it to become my energy. And then this continuum in the body can go on another day, another year, right? Until I'm 100 or 120. So this story of the ability to unify with nature, the ability to take energy from nature, not just put it in my stomach, but rather convert it to become my own energy. This is the story of what we call the unification ability. We also call it in Yuan medicine the recharging instrument. That thing in the body that allows us to recharge the batteries. Every night I'm exhausted, I go to sleep, wake up in the morning, guess what happened? I'm not tired again. We also call it energy again. Like as if you don't know where it's coming from. All of a sudden, energy again. And of course, the recharging and the unification happens all throughout the day, not just when we sleep. So every time when I inhale, every time when I eat, when I drink, I harvest energy, and again, I have more energy. So there is that seed of life there, this continuum that I get at conception. We'll talk about it in a minute on fertility. There is that seed of energy that comes in that needs the body, that needs the unification in order then to develop a baby body, a human adult body, keep on harvesting energy, and live another day, another day, another day. Right? That seed that was supposed to be just for a couple of minutes, right? So if you take an embryo, for example, like a sperm and an egg get together and you get an embryo, if you don't give it a body, it cannot harvest energy from nature. You can clearly see that it lives very few moments, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, it doesn't matter. It does not continue. But of course, an embryo inside the body of the mother will enjoy the benefits of getting energy from the mother. So the mother will be temporarily for 9 months during pregnancy, the carrier. She will harvest energy from nature and give some of the energy to the fetus, to the baby to develop. So then the embryo can survive without a body yet until it has a baby body and it comes out in birth, and then it starts to survive on its own. But this seed of life, if I go back to this, needs a physical body to allow it to connect to nature, but it also needs the ability to bind with this energy that we harvest, right? We harvest energy from nature and we need to bind with it. This is called the unification ability. And so all of a sudden, Hunyuan medicine at least start to think about two things as far as in this conversation to this point. Start to think of two things. One is, how is the body is working just right, right? How is the unification, separation of the body works just right? And that practically will mean, how do we get rid of all kind of symptoms? I have headache, back pain, stomach pain, problem with urination, I'm nauseous, I'm hot, I'm cold, my eyes are blurry. All the things that I have in the body, this is on this image that you see here is point number 2. Like, what's wrong on the body? And on the many different departments. What's wrong here? What's wrong there? What's wrong everywhere? More than that, Hunyuan medicine say, okay, not only the body is important, not to feel pains and aches and this kind of issues, but actually, when we think about it, one of, if not one of almost the most important things that we can think about in medicine is really how long can we live? And how long can we live does not talk about number 2, rather talks about number 1, which means how strong can I recharge? So here again in Hunyuan medicine, over many years of research, experimenting, developing, borrowing stuff from other religions, from wherever, trying to find out what's the story of the unification, how to increase it, how to diagnose it. And again, part of it, a big part of it, we'll discuss in the course, like learn how to do it exactly. But now there's actually another story. Even though we thought that we found everything already, there's actually one more thing going on. So here, in this circle in the bottom, all of a sudden we see that we have another circle in the middle. And again, this is a very big topic in the course that we're learning. I think there are 2 classes or 3 classes talking about what in Hunyuan we call Shinfa or heart method. So it's a very big topic about the emotions and the spirituality side of the person and how important is that. Here I'm just introducing this topic and saying, up to this point, I explained the continuum and the physical body, unification and separation, and the batteries, the recharging, the importance of that. More than that, remember at the very beginning, I gave a big talk about the circle and continuum. Like, what the hell is continuum? What are we talking about? This actually start talking about when this continuum goes into a physical body, what's the purpose of it? What's the meaning of a human being being alive? So obviously it depends on the level of the thought that we have, but we could say life is to have fun. Life, being alive, is you have to eat food, right? You have to breathe, you have to drink. That's being alive. But I have a different opinion. And again, some of it I didn't invent myself, but I have a different opinion. My opinion is that any human being that comes to this world, that is born into this world, actually comes with a purpose. And the purpose is not to graze the grass. It's not like you're here, so might as well eat apples and bananas. Like, why am I here? Why did my parents give birth to me? What am I doing here in the world? Is not to eat food. I mean, I have to eat food to live, but that's not my purpose, right? This is just the vehicle that helped me stick around for a few more years. That's why I have to eat. That's why I have to make money. That's why I have to get dressed and have a shelter, right? So I don't die in the blizzard. It's because so I can stay around here longer. But why do I need to stay here longer? Like, what's my purpose? This is really the meaning of this continuum going into a human being. Like that life that goes into a human being, this is described here in these 2 circles as the inner circle. We call it the fire inner circle. I guess in Portuguese, Círculo Interno de Fogo. I guess that's what it means, the fire inner circle. And it talks about the heart, the emotions, spirituality, and more so, in ancient language, it's called the true nature of the person. But true nature basically means, what's my purpose in the world? Why am I here? So now, this issue again is a big, big issue, but it has a fundamental part, first of all, for the meaning why I'm here, and second, also for my health, because, and let me just describe it in 2 words, all the emotions that I have, all the actions that I take, all the words that I say, all the thoughts that I think, they come not from my physical body, they don't come from my arm muscles, they don't come from my stomach, from my legs. They come from an internal mechanism. Here we call it the fire inner circle, but it comes from an internal mechanism that is connected to this continuum, to this life that was brought into my body. There's a different mechanism. Now, this mechanism on a principle level has similarity. It's a circle, just like the body, but it has its own thing, its own data, its own facts, its own issues that needs to be explored. So it is a circle just like the body, but the body's unification separation circle, needs to eat vegetables, needs to interact physically with things, has a certain purpose. The heart, the emotion, the spirituality side, my purpose, is a different mechanism that we need to investigate too. This information I'm just sharing with you come to me after many years of researching a school, an ancient Chinese school that's called the Huaishuan. And so again, I didn't invent much of it. Some of it I developed, but I'm just sharing with you. So don't think that I invented the wheel here or that I invented that circle. But it is borrowed from some people smarter than me in the ancient past. But this inner circle is actually the real engine behind the human body. So most of the energy that goes into the unification, remember, before I mentioned we eat food and energy goes into the body, and then we convert that energy to become mind. Most of this energy goes to the heart to fulfill its purpose, which basically means to the spirituality and the emotion and this. And this, from what I know about all kinds of medicine, Western medicine, Chinese medicine, does not exist at all. In other words, realizing that most of the energy is concealed there, is coming from there, is being used by that mechanism. Some of it that is left is being used by the body. So now, specifically, let's stay in the realm of medicine here. If you talk about many chronic diseases, from cancer to Parkinson to all kinds of diseases that nobody knows where they're coming from, there's no cure for, not even by a long shot, despite the tremendous amount of investigation and money put into it. I believe, this is just my belief, they all come from this center instrument and not from the physical body. So part of the thing, and again, this is many years long process of investigation trying to get better, is to find, like deeper solutions, like for all these very devastating things that nobody for decades and decades can find any solution. This is the reason why I'm doing it. It's not just because I want to go out there into nowhere land, but rather it's clearly coming not from the physical body, and we need to have more and more tools. So part of the things we did in Hunyuan is over years developed this Shinfa methods, incorporated the Huaishuan. Huaishuan is like school from 200 years ago or more that was solely dedicated to understanding the heart and emotion and how does that impact our life, how it makes us sick. So we're talking about thousands of people, thousands of volumes of literature over 2 centuries that investigate specifically just the heart and spirituality and emotions and how it relates to our life and health and so forth. But this is the fire inner circle. Most of the energy from the unification in number one goes to the heart, and it impacts directly also the body. So if you think about, even just from a superficial point of view, you think about someone getting really upset and over time develop stomach ulcer, it's very easy to see how emotions impact the physical body, right? You get angry, you see how the face gets flushed right away. You see how feeling impact the body. Now, again, this, what I just mentioned, is very superficial, but it's very true. Like yesterday, I had a patient who just found out that her cancer diagnosis that she thought went away came back. We just started recently and she had treatment on this. So again, I'm not aiming to cure anything or treat anything, but definitely all the work needs to be inside the heart. And of course, whatever treatment she does with the oncologist, and she does with them. But as far as I'm concerned, is to find out how we can power it on from the inside. And again, there's a lot of information there, and this is part of Yuan medicine. If I want to, summarize what I said up to this point, right? I talked about a lot of things, the body, the unification, the heart circle, and all this. What we're after is something that is called center. This is an ancient Confucian concept, different levels of understanding what center means or zhong. But in the Huaishuan concept, this is a main idea that we have to grapple with and understand what center means. So it has a superficial meanings that means it's not too much, it's not too little, not to the left, not to the right. It has all this kind of meaning of center. But really, this concept of center, again, it comes from thousands of years ago, as this, what I explained at the beginning, is continued. Center actually means that this life came into the body and it's always there, just right, just right, just right. This is the meaning of center on a little bit deeper level. So when we grapple with Hunyuan medicine, with techniques, with diagnosis, what we do is always go back to that center in the body, how the body goes back to center, how does unification goes back to center, how does the heart goes back to center. But what the center mean is that life that comes through it is always just right, just right, just right. This is this meaning of center. So now, when we start to deal with more technicalities, and again, our Hunyuan medicine goes from a very abstract to the theory to start testing the theories with practical modality of diagnosis, like how do you diagnose each part of the circle, the inner circle, the outer circle, the unification. I tested it, many of my students in the past tested it over and over again for years. Some things were not so true. We had to change them until they become true, right? That's the whole idea of theory and testing it. But just to show you here that when we start talking about the medicine now, from a more practical point of view, right? How do you diagnose it? How do you look at it? You have the circles. Each part of the circle in the course we will learn has a certain meaning. Just for example, if you look at the top part of the circle of the physical body, this is the most exterior part of the body. So if you start to analyze in the body where the exterior start coming into the body, you clearly see that it starts coming through the nose, through the mouth, through the skin. This is the top of the circle, right? That's when nature starts to penetrate inwards in different ways. Sunlight, food, air, water, whatever it is. And it goes more and more towards the center. So if you follow the circle on the right side, we start talking about different things in the physical body that goes deeper and deeper. If it's the digestion with the stomach, the metabolism with the intestine, spleen, other organs, it's all going inside and inside until the material that we don't need is separated and goes out in the bathroom. The pure energy is also separated and is being incorporated into the body in the bottom of the circle, which is unification. Right? So if you imagine when you eat an apple, the apple does not really incorporate into your body. 99% of the apple or more, you expel it. Either the water or the material goes in the bathroom one way or the other. Small parts of it are assimilating into the body. So this is the process that we analyze in the unification. Where is it going? What happens in different parts of the body and so forth. After that, we also analyze the different parts of the body that speak of separation. What happened on the right side of the circle if the body starts slowing down and the food does not come down, right? If you get nauseous and things like that, if the water does not come down, if the air does not come in. When I say come down, I mean come in into the inside. What happened on the left side of the circle when the body that should separate the energy to the surface start to separate too fast or separate too slow. So this is another concept that I'm just introducing here briefly. In the course, we'll talk about it much more, is how to look at the physical body. Are we looking at it, like a box, like a material thing? Or are we looking at it as something that is constantly in motion? We call it in progression, that constantly progress. And if we look at something that is in constant motion, then this issue of yin and yang, excess and deficiency does not stand. It doesn't have merit there. Excess and deficiency, hot and cold, yin and yang, that kind of a concept, I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's on a more superficial level if you look at the body as a static thing. That could be this or that. And then the idea of balance is different, right? Balance between hot and cold, excess and deficiency. we could also call it center or balance, but it's on a different level of grasp. We grasp it on a different level. When we talk about the continuum, the life that flows through the body, that I go to sleep and I wake up, I go to sleep and I wake up, every day is different. Every day when I go to sleep, it looks like it's yesterday, but it's not. It's one day more progressed on my mission. Of course, if I didn't do anything and I didn't fulfill my purpose, it could be that after 50 years, I still didn't fulfill anything of my mission. So at the end, I'm going to die and my life did not fulfill its purpose. So again, that's the worst thing that can happen to us. But if we realize that life is progressing, and even though it looks every day that I'm awake and asleep, it looks the same, but it's not the same. Not just that I'm growing older, no, it's bad for me. So every day I get older. That's not the meaning. Every day I need to progress in my mission, in my purpose, so I fulfill it more and more and more. We realize that it's different. And when we think about it that way, the body's progression, all the circle of in and out, unification, separation that I explained at the beginning, we cannot view it as a static image to say it's either excessive or deficient or that kind of thing. But rather, it's either moving too fast or it's moving too slow or it's moving just right. These are all the options that we have when we have that kind of a circular action in our mind. So then these arrows that you see here, it's only to start to analyze the body. Is it moving just right? Then it means my body physically feels great. Not hot, not cold, not headache, not pain, no problem with urination, not constipation, nothing. Everything works just right. This is when life flows through the body just right. But if all of a sudden, I mean, life is in the body, I'm not dead, I'm still alive, but all of a sudden, back pain, all of a sudden, I'm constipated, all of a sudden, I'm nauseous. Again, if I would think about this, the body is just a piece of material, then I could say there's too much stomach acid, there's too much yin, there's too much yang, not enough yin, not enough yang, something that actually has a materialistic idea. But if we think about it the way I explained so far today, we realize that anything that happens in the body that makes me feel not well, like nauseous, like hot, like headache, like anything, the eye hurts me, whatever it is, it basically means that the life that goes through the body, the life is this continuum that goes through the body. Here, it's not going right. How is it not going right? It's either it's too much, it's going too fast. There's not too much, but it's going too fast or it's going too slow. And we start to develop our model of understanding the body in that way. And again, how do you know if you're thirsty? What does it mean? If you're constipated, what does it mean? If you're constipated, what does it mean? Again, all the symptoms and why and how we discuss in the course, but there's a thorough theory behind it, what everything does and how to understand every single thing in the body as far as functions. Now, I just want to jump a moment to fertility. This image here that you see, and just to show you, again, not to talk about fertility so much, but just to show you, when you start with understanding the abstract concept, then the theory, then the details of the circle, actually Hunyuan medicine applies to everything. If you're in sport medicine, if you're in pediatric medicine, if you're in beauty medicine, if you're in fertility medicine, we artificially try to focus on a certain group of problems, but actually any kind of problem that we have in the body, we need to investigate it like I did here with fertility, spent years and years to take that model of Hunyuan and deepen it specifically for that kind of a problem. So we can do that. But by no means is Hunyuan medicine, that principle is really just for fertility. For me, it's for fertility because I invested many years specifically in that problem to develop the model. But again, if someone else has something in sports medicine or other kind of specific problem, they can take the same model and pursue it and pursue it, pursue it until it becomes more effective, and so forth. But here, just to explain to you in a few words, so how is fertility now in Hunyuan medicine? How is that not regular with IVF, with the egg, follicular phase, luteal phase, all the regular thing in fertility? How all of a sudden you get something else? Actually take the same concept of continuum, what is the body doing, how is the inner heart connect to it, and now we're just thinking about this problem of getting pregnant. The woman gives something, the man gives something. What does it mean? And here I'm just giving you the bottom line, but of course there's a much more information behind it. But just the bottom line is that a woman gets stronger and stronger and stronger within the menstrual, within the cycle, the 1 month of the cycle that she has, until there's an optimal time. And in that optimal time, what we call the ovulation in Western medicine is a split of the unification ability. Remember, we have 1 and 2, the unification, and there is the body, separation, unification activity. Part of creating a new life is the ability to create recharging capability. So if you think about an embryo, a sperm and an egg getting together, there's no body yet, there's no baby yet, right? There's no lungs, there's no stomach. But that thing that we call an embryo started living. It started living right at the spot where the sperm and egg got together. So, and you can see that because life continues from there. That embryo develops into a baby, develops into a living adult, and so forth. Only when the sperm and egg merge together. So the egg, even though it carries a part of the story, and the sperm carries a part of the story of life and the body, alone they cannot make a baby. But when they merge together, at that moment, you have a continuum. What is the continuum here in this story? There is a purpose. Remember, there is the fire inner circle. That's the continuum. And the first thing that is needed is number 1, not number 2. The unification ability was needed right at the get-go. And then, because you can see that the physical body of the baby develops later. First you conceive, you create new life, and then you develop a body, not the other way around. You don't develop a body first, and then the baby becomes alive. The life starts first, then number 2 joins along. The same at the end. When the body dies, it continues, but the body does not continue. That number 2 is something that accompany us throughout life, and it's not the life itself. So where is that life coming? Initially, you have the continuum that coming from the father and the mother, the heart, the spirituality comes with the sperm and the egg. But what's more than the sperm and the egg is the ability of that thing, we call an embryo, to recharge. To recharge meaning to take some energy at this time from the mother, but to have another moment, right? All the separation, unification gets to the bottom of the circle, it recharges, and then another moment. It recharges at the bottom, then another moment. This is what happens at conception with an embryo. So the question is now, where is that thing coming from? And in my explanation, it comes from the mother and the father with the sperm and the egg. So I give it a name. It says, from the mother unification capability with the egg, there's part of the unification that goes with the egg. In this instance, we call it a pivot, a female pivot. With the sperm, likewise, something slightly different happens. And I show you the next image. This is like the male pivot. So you see it's on the other side, on the top side of the circle. There is a split, and of course the sperm and the egg behave not the same. The egg travel from the ovary to the center of the body. The sperm travel from the center of the body, ejaculate outside of the body. You can see clearly unification style energy in the egg, separation style energy in the sperm. The sperm goes into the egg and start to separate, and you see the cells start separating, and so forth and so forth. Again, this is a big topic that I'm just briefly explaining how to take a Hunyuan medicine model and apply it to a very specific topic and push it until you start getting more and more understanding, and then you can tailor to it the diagnosis and the treatment and get more and more effective. And that's obviously in medicine our ultimate objective, right? Understand the problem better and address it better and so forth. So just to share with you now, when we go into the treatment, we had the understanding the theory, putting a diagnosis. I didn't talk a lot about the diagnosis. Again, that's a whole class just talking about how to do the diagnosis correctly. There are many things involved there. But just to share with you that even all the way to the end, from the beginning, from the very abstract, to developing the theory, to testing the theory, to then developing the diagnosis and testing the diagnosis, to developing the treatment method, they all sit on the same model. Just like when you get to the herbal treatment, for example, there are different herbs. For us in Hunyuan medicine, every herb has a certain action on the circle. And you can see here, for example, a list of herbs that help the bottom right of the circle go towards unification. You can see other herbs, for example, on this slide, that slow down the bottom left side of the circle. And again, what does that mean? We talk about in the course very methodically. First we need to understand exactly the circle, what happened on every part of the circle. And then, what happened means in the body, the muscles start moving, the skin start interacting, the teeth start interacting, the stomach, the digestion, right? First we understand what happened on the circle. Then we start to understand what can go wrong on the circle. So if the top right of the circle starts slowing down, you see that these actions in the mouth and stomach start to show so-and-so symptoms. Why? We explain that too. After we understand what does the body do on the circle, what can go wrong on the circle, and how to diagnose it, then we start figuring out what are the solutions. This is where we're at right now in this slide. Like you have different herbs that can have different action on the body, either slowing down this part, speeding up that part, and so forth. And there's not a lot of herbs. The beauty about Hunyuan medicine, for me at least, is that I took 400 or 500 herbs that I learned in Chinese medicine and I reduced them to about 20 herbs that works really effective all the time the way I want them to. So instead of going to a strategy like I had originally with Chinese medicine, hundreds or thousands of formulas, impossible to memorize, hundreds of herbs you cannot possibly remember, to 20 herbs, to understanding the principle, just know a few herbs. It's like, to know what the herbs are doing takes you not longer than an hour. These herbs do this, the other herbs do that, and so forth. But then, of course, there's a little bit more information. It's like how to combine the herbs into formulas. And again, this is not the same like when we learn formulas in Chinese medicine. Just memorize thousands of formulas with symptoms and stuff like this. For me, over the years, it became not necessary. All what I want is for me to be able to diagnose very clearly and for medicine to work very effectively. More than that, I also realized that if I can give patients herbs that taste really good and make the patients really happy, again, mind you, that relates to our heart department, like the patients actually feel happy instead of miserable, it's better than giving them, herbs that taste horrible. Just think about it from a logical point of view. Forget about anything that you learned before. Just think about it from a patient point of view. If you had an option to drink something that tastes really hard to drink, makes you nauseous, you want to throw up, or taste something like the herbs that I normally give, ginger, cinnamon, and patient says, wow, I love it. Like every day they look forward to it instead of dreading it. So you just ask yourself from logical point of view, if it's the same effectiveness, wouldn't it be better to take the teas that taste much better? Not to mention if it's much more effective. Take the good tasting teas and it's actually much more effective. So that's, of course, completely, you don't need to think about that. But this is a style, for example, of how to understand, in this particular case, is how to understand some basic classical formula. The formula that you see here is Guizitang from the Shanghan Lun. You can see, instead of just memorizing the herbs, there's 5 herbs, this, that, and the other, you actually start understanding within the formula, each one of the herbs has an action on the circle. The reason that this is very important, it's extremely important, and I'm sharing another formula from the Shanghan Lun, Ma Huang Tang. You can see each one of the herbs has a certain action on the circle. If you know that and you prescribe or want to prescribe this kind of formula, then it becomes very easy first to adjust the formula, change the formula, combine the formula, because every single herbs all the time in a formula for us in Hunyuan medicine has a meaning, has a target, like has a reason. We never put herbs in the formula because you need 10 herbs and these are the 10 herbs. I'm not sure why each one of them. I just put all of them. Every one of the herbs that I give to a patient has a purpose. And then if something happened, And let me just share with you, for example, a unification formula. This is what we call a unification style formula, and there are many different variations. Some herbs help you bring fire into and I'm not going into detail, but there is a logic, and we learned it in the course as well, how to do a unification formula. And I've been doing it for years and years. In the earlier years, when I started with that, was using aconite or fudze, which is very problematic. And you know, I used to be part of the fire spirit school many years back and use it a lot. But the goal there of the formulas using fudze that I used to use 10, 15 years ago is to reach unification effect. But then I kept on developing it, and I realized that it's really not necessary to use fudze. Actually, you can use other herbs like the Vietnamese cinnamon, Ceylon cinnamon, ginger that you can see here. An Gui, Lang Gui is Vietnamese, and Ceylon cinnamons. And you get actually better results. So remember just what I said a few minutes ago. Is it good to drink teas that taste really bad versus teas that taste really good, that even have a better effect? The same with this. Is it better for me to use formulas? And I'm just going into there, you know, we don't really need to talk about it. But for me, 10 years ago or more, it was, do I really have to keep on using foods there, which many people are afraid of, has some toxicity, all kind of stuff, very hard to get, problem with the government? Or can I use other herbs and find out if there's better efficacy, which I did find. And for many years, the effect of the unification formulas that I use without foods, without aconite, is great, even better than before. So there's no purpose for keeping it. And so I dropped it out many years ago already. But this is a style. So you see unification formula, every one of the herbs in the formula has a purpose. And I didn't discuss the purpose here, but I'm just sharing with you, it has a purpose. So if the patients start drinking it and they feel great, great. But if they start feeling hot, if they start sweating, if they don't sleep at night, if they start feeling this, that, or the other, every symptom that they feel shows that something went wrong on the circle. And immediately I would be able to identify it's because of this herb, that herb, or the other one. So with the years, of course, I'm having very, very little side effects with patients. But when there is any side effects, the smallest side effects possible, I feel a little lightheaded, I feel a little thirsty. The first time that I do modification, I tell them, remove this herb. Just keep on drinking the herb, because, you know, I don't give them powder with this. It's all raw herbs, so they can isolate the herbs and not add one of them tomorrow. And it's almost 100% accuracy that the next day they're not thirsty anymore. That's what I mentioned at the beginning. From theory to practice, you test it, and if you test again and again to work, then that's how you know that the theory is true. If it works half of the time, half not, the theory is kakame. It's not a good theory. But that's our goal with developing a theory and testing it until it works more and more and more the way you want it to work. And this is what I'm sharing with you here. The same thing when I'm going into other treatment modalities, and we're getting to the end of the class. I don't want to just go on and on, but just to share about what we call external therapy, like with acupuncture, with body rubbing. I also developed it differently with what I call Wuji packs. So it's like, you know, hot packs that you use, like physiotherapists use to put on aching muscles. So even instead of acupuncture, I have these packs that I ask patients either to heat it up or cool it off and put it on a certain areas in the body. All together, acupuncture, rubbing, heat, cold packs, we call them together external style therapies, right? To differentiate it from the herbs that you're drinking, right? So we have therapies on the outside of the body, and we have therapies that you ingest. And third kind of therapies I don't have much time to talk about today is the Shinfa, the heart methods, how to get into the heart of the person, how to teach them things, how to let them exercise things that bring the heart back into harmony. But let's just stay here with the external therapy side. I'm just sharing with you here, we're still looking at the same circle. In Portuguese, it should say there at the top, head, cabeça. On the right side of the circle, it should say feet or legs. On the bottom of the circle, centro do corpo is the center of the body. And on the left side of the circle, bracos should be hands or arms. This is called taking the body and putting it on the circle. Like these areas that we call in Hunyuan medicine, Tai Yang, Yang Ming, Tai Yin, Shao Yin, Jue Yin, Shao Yang. These are ancient concepts. They come from the Shang Han Nun. They were widely discussed throughout history. They had different scholars giving them different meanings. So some people say the Taiyang is, for example, 2 meridians, right? Like the bladder and small intestine. Other people say, no, the Taiyang is actually an area on the body surface and so forth. So there were all kinds of things throughout history. And I chose the ones, of course, that make sense for me in my model. But this image here is called taking the physicality of the body. The Taiyang Yangming here talks about physical areas on the body and placing them on the circle in a way that makes sense. Similarly, if we want to make it more practical for our application, we bring the circle onto the body. So here you can see an image of a human being, of a person, and the circle, the same Shaoyang, Taiyang, Yangming, the circle circulates on the body in the different areas that we saw in the circle, right? So the Taiyang is in the head, the Yangming goes down along the body to the legs, the Tai-Yin and the Shao-Yin goes back from the leg back into the center of the body, the Jue-Yin goes from the center of the body to the palm of the hand, the Shao-Yang climb on the outside of the hand until we get to the Tai-Yang, which is the head, the shoulder, and the head, and so forth. And we actually complete a circle like this. So this is a working model, how to work on the body from the exterior. And again, there are different techniques. One is with acupuncture, how to use the acupuncture, how to chart it, how to note it. If you cannot use acupuncture, how to use heat or cold pads or just rubbing. You rub in different directions to either speed it up or slow it down. The same thing, you use heat on the packs to speed it up, or you use cold on the packs. The heat, the packs, you can either put them in the freezer or steam them, boil them, make them hot. Hot will speed up the circle, cold will slow it down, depending again on your diagnosis and what you need to do. Our objective is always to bring it back to the center. So if it's too slow, you want to speed it up. If it's too fast, you slow it down. And again, I'm just introducing it here. I'm not exactly explaining how to do it. That's what we're going to do in the course. On every one of these topics that I mentioned here, we'll have at least one class, some of them 2 or 3 classes. How to actually do it in practice. So again, just developing it a little bit more. So not only do we have the different parts of the body, but we have smaller and smaller area that to help us pinpoint where do we want to put the heat packs, where do we want to put the needles, which direction, and so forth. Just to share with you this image of body areas or needling areas. So that brings me to the end of the introductory webinar. You might have some questions. I'm happy to answer questions that you have. And again, you have my emails. You also feel free. I hope, again, before I get to the question, that you feel inclined to join our course here in Global Branches, which is, again, the only place that I'm teaching live now. And go ahead. So if there are any questions, maybe you want to read them to me, and I'm happy to answer.
Sure. Thank you very much. This was really interesting. We have already a few questions. We have a viewer called Sergi Lomio who asked the following. In your experience, once you strengthen unification to its proper state, how often visible signs of premature aging do go away?
Oh, very often. Very often. That's like very common. So many of my patients come, you said, people tell me that my hair is black again. White hair becomes black, varicose veins disappear, lower back pain, all kind of old aging symptoms. They definitely, this is very common, very, very common.
Very
Because
well.
we are actually targeting that. I'm on purpose, I'm shying away to call it like anti-aging kind of bogus thing, because this is just so much, I'm not sure how to describe it, but that's not my cup of tea. I'm not trying to sell people some snake oil, but actually our medicine has something to address what is actually aging. Aging means decline unification. So if you have any method to increase unification, like that you recharge the batteries like it used to be 2 years ago, you're less old in that definition, but not about wrinkles and that.
Very well. Thank you. Next question. Now the viewer asked, what do you use instead of fudzi to open the joints?
Well, first of all, foods, any herbs that you use it according to a certain model. So, for example, some people say I'm using Shang Hanun style formulas. What does it mean? Shang Hanun has a bunch of 113 formulas, and I try to copy the formulas according to the symptoms. So that's a model. Why would I use it? So why would you use a foods in that formula? I don't know. It says in the Shang Hanun. That's why I use it.
See.
In our logic, the foods that doesn't have opening the joint. Foods is a fiery substance that you ingest. Now, in the unification formula, you need few other methods to help submerge that fire into the body. In ancient time, in the fire spirit school, we used to call it submerging the dragon. What is the dragon? Used in the I Ching to describe the heaven energy. Heaven energy is what I described at the beginning of this class, continuum. So when you use food, there's a kind of herbs that has a lot of fire that you ingest. But if you ingest it by itself, immediately the body rejects it. So you start having headaches, this all the toxic actions. But if you do a unification formula and you put prepared licorice and you put ginger and you put cinnamon, all these things that help it submerge, what in the ancient past they would call it submerge the dragon, all of a sudden you see the fire does not come to your face, but instead you feel much more vital. So again, it's not that the fudze is doing it. The fudze is just bringing fire. If you know how to do unification formula, that becomes miraculous. It's not the fudze itself, it's very toxic. You drink a lot of it, you're dead. How is that a good herb? You just need to know what to do with it to make the fire submerge. This already talks about you understanding the entire medicine, not really understanding that herb. Like, so for example, I just explained a little bit. On the circle, if the top right of the circle slows down, it's called the Yang Ming slowdown, and you feel thirsty and hot and that kind of thing. If you put a fiery substance in it, all of a sudden that slowing down intensifies, which basically means you can kill the person. It gets hotter and hotter and headache to an extreme degree, get arrhythmia and dies. But on the other hand, this person, if you put them herbs that submerge the yang ming, for example, zhimu, shenganzao, huangqin, few of these herbs, and then you see that that problem disappeared. Now the energy flows well. Then you put the same foods in, all of a sudden that person becomes younger. You were just supposed to be dead. Now the same herbs make him younger. It's not about the foods, it's to know when to use it, how, without making damage. But I found out that if you don't use the foods, instead I developed what I call fire water, which you can find in different places. It's a tincture from two different kinds of cinnamon, from dried ginger and fennel that I put in alcohol. It's a cold extraction, so I don't boil it. And I extract it with the 6-ton kind of a thing. It's called cold extraction. I use that. It works much better than foods and totally not toxic and unthreatening. It just has cinnamon and ginger and fennel. So for example, instead of it, but get awesome effect in unification. And that's really what I'm after. I'm not after using foods. I'm after getting great unification effect. That's the goal.
See, I hope that answered the question of our viewer ABZ Mite. Another question we have is, what's your experience treating women going through IVF treatments? Are the treatments compatible with Hunyuan?
Yeah, I mean, first I treated thousands of IVF patients over many years. And I did spend 300 hours in an IVF clinic, part of my doctoral program. So I have a lot of experience with IVF. Now, IVF has a good purpose. Some patients can never get pregnant. IVF can really help them. Many patients don't really need IVF, but instead they get a lot of IVF, and that really damaged their chances, damaged their health for no good reason. So I'm not okay with that. Overall, I'm really trying to help patients the best I can, So individually, each patient that comes in, depending what phase they are in their process, sometimes they just want to do IVF no matter what. I don't fight with them. I don't scare them. I said, God bless. I'll try to help you wherever I can. Sometimes they could really get pregnant easily by themselves, and doing IVF is not the best idea. Just try by yourself a few more months, get the unification going. And I got hundreds of people pregnant like this. So why not? You know, everyone who thought that they could get pregnant by themselves will do it. Nobody will try IVF first. So this is in general about IVF. Now, as far as compatibility, there's all kind of issues. Again, we in the course we have a class dedicated to that. There's a lot of issues there. If doctors are compliant with your herbs, if they agree with that, there's a lot of stories there. Some of them do agree, some don't agree. And again, things maybe I cannot get into right now, but there's a lot of information to explore. Generally speaking, there's no issue between the unification herbs and IVF drugs or the acupuncture models that we have. It only helps get them stronger. The only precautions that I give is 2-3 days before the retrieval to stop the herbs, just not to increase chance of bleeding when they go with needles and poke at the ovaries. So that's the only precautions. Otherwise, with the herbs, I never found any problem. To the contrary, some IVF doctors consistently send me patients, especially with the herbs, to help them lower the FSH and all kind of things. So some doctors completely believe in it after they saw the results. Some doctors, of course, completely against it, but that's a whole other story.
Exactly. We have one more question from again Sergi Lomio, who's asking: is there food grade ingredients that do the submerging function? With a comment, that would be great to eat hot dishes.
Okay, hot dishes. We're talking about spicy food, like in Indian food, that kind of thing. Generally
I
speaking,
think so. Yeah.
generally speaking, what submerges is sweetness. So in the 1920s, believe it or not, in China, they used to use regular sugar as medicine because most people could not afford to buy sugar. So you would give them some sugar with the herbs. That would be, but really any sweetness that you add to the formula has a submerging effect. However, we didn't get into it much, but submerging effect means that it slows it down, not just submerging it. So if a person has missing fire and you give them sweetness, it's slow, you're killing them. So it does not, submerging does not mean giving them energy. Submerging means it makes the fire not go up. But if your fire is low, and you so imagine someone that has low metabolism and is obese, and you give them more sweet and more sweet, it just gets worse and worse. Their fire is very low. In a unification formula, you put a lot of fire and then you put sweetness to submerge this excess fire. So when you do unification formula, it's a very delicate balance between how much fire and how much sweet, and if you add ginger to it to merge the two. So again, any sweetness can serve as a submerging effect. So if you eat very spicy food, you just add some sugar, it makes it less fiery, except that some of the spices that you eat, they don't have fiery properties. They have all kind of other properties. So you can mistake that. You eat very spicy food that makes you sweat, it's actually a separation herb. It's not a fiery herb. You know, sometimes if you eat and you get really sweaty, it's not because there's a lot of fire, it's just a separation herb. You understand? So don't mistake sweating with fire. That's not exactly the same.
Um, Sergi says, very well explained. Thanks again. Got it. And he indeed meant spicy food. Very well. I think that's about it in terms of questions. I would like to remind our viewers that we shared in the chat section a promotional code that actually is the early bird to get a promotion to participate in this course that will start in 3 weeks. The promotional code is valid a full week from now on, and you can subscribe to, not subscribe, I'm sorry, enroll in this course until 1 week prior the beginning of the course. Thank you very much, Dr. Yaron. That was really interesting. And I hope we'll see you viewers at the course. Have a great rest of day, everyone. A great evening, a great afternoon, and take care. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.